The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 172 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
You soon-to-be birthday boy, you.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Going to be
in advance.
That 40-something again.
Clear your throat when you say that.
Yeah. Not 50-something like you keep thinking. Maybe it is. I'm not saying.
Allegedly. Just always say allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
And then it keeps people in the dark.
Yeah.
So you're doing good. I'm doing good. Gibbs, we have some Patreon supporter shout outs
Awesome.
to give. We had Kristen B.
Hey, Kristen.
Don Gillis.
What's going on, Don?
Kelsey Welch.
Hey, Kelsey.
Leslie Green.
What's going on, Leslie?
Rosie Overell.
Hey, Rosie.
Michelle Crook.
What's going on, Michelle?
Tashi.
Hey, thanks, Tashi.
Brittany Dickey.
Hey, what's up going on, Dickie?
Real Blingy.
Oh, better than false blingy.
Ben Cervantes.
Hey, Ben.
Gina Valdez.
Hey, Valdez.
Lauren Davies.
Hey, thanks, Lauren.
Arthur Doyle.
Hey, Arthur.
Annie.
Like the show tune Annie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the son.
We had Mateus.
Hey, Mateus.
Danielle Sims.
What's going on, Danielle?
Alana McKee.
Hey, Alana.
Mary Maggie.
Hey, Mary.
Emily Belinfante.
Hey, Belafonte.
It's not Belafonte, which I thought it was.
Oh.
It's actually Belinfante.
Oh, well, hey, Belafonte.
R. Parker.
What's going on, R?
Tracy Jones.
Hey, TJ.
Rachel Matkin.
What's going on, Rachel?
Marilyn Anstis.
Hey, thanks, Antis.
Christy Hole.
What's going on, Christy?
And last but not least, Martin Burke.
Hey, Martin.
So we appreciate all that new support. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
Yeah.
This week we selected Colleen Connor.
Hey, thanks, Colleen.
So thank you to Colleen and all the people that support us month after month. We had some great PayPal donations. Jennifer Warmuth.
Hey, thanks, Jennifer.
Lisa DeCoster.
Hey, DeCosta.
Dessa.
What's going on, Dessa?
Jillian Jager.
Hey, JJ.
And Amy Hester.
Hey, thanks, Amy.
So thank you all. Gibbs, we talked about it on our Patreon episode this weekend, but we have some new True Crime All the Time masks.
You do?
For sale on the merch shop. They're actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I got some in to try, and you and I had them on in our video.
Just don't use them to rob a place.
No.
Because they're tracing back to us, and then we have to explain something.
I've thought about that a little bit over the last few months. Like, are places getting robbed more because it's not unusual for somebody to walk into a store with a mask?
And gloves?
I just wonder if in gloves.
Yeah.
I just wonder if the crime rate is going up in some of these small stores where there's one or two people working.
Especially if you've got a lot of people around you with masks on too. Like you just blend in, man. It's a perfect setup.
We have a brand new episode out of True Crime All the Time. And it's a very interesting case. We're talking about James Parker and Robert Tulloch.
It's really intriguing.
Two teenagers. And we're up in the Northeast, Vermont, New Hampshire area.
Yeah.
These are guys that decide that they're bored with their small town Vermont life.
Right.
And they're going to start committing crimes to finance a move to Australia. And it goes horribly wrong.
Very, very wrong.
But that's out right now. Check it out. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
Yeah, I am.
We're talking about a number of bizarre, unsolved cases in the city of Great Falls, Montana. In particular, 6 murder cases that span 4 different decades. I mean, we're talking from the 1950s to the 1980s. And we start off on January 2nd, 1956. 18-year-old airman Lloyd Bogle had picked up his 16-year-old girlfriend, Patricia Kalitzke, and they went to the local drive-in restaurant. They ate dinner, and that was the last time that either of them were seen alive. Sometime later that evening, 3 teenage boys walked up one of the more deserted roads near Wadsworth Park. This was known to be kind of a lover's lane type area to the locals.
Every town's got one of those.
I think what they were looking to do was to spook people that were sitting in their car,
sitting there making out,
kissing. So once the boys got down the road to the place where, cars would park, they saw a car parked between 2 big trees, and this car had its headlights on. The boys approached the car, and they noticed a young man lying face down with his hands tied behind his back with his belt. His legs were partially under the car, and these boys could also tell that he had been shot in the back of his head.
Well, they see that, man, they are gone. They hurry back to town to get a hold of the police.
I'm assuming that their feet started churning like in a Scooby-Doo cartoon.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they took off. Police arrived at the murder site. And I think one of the first things they thought was strange was that, okay, you have a young man at what the locals consider to be Lover's Lane.
Right.
But he's by himself.
Bizarre.
So they thought, all right, there was a female. There had to have been a female with him. Where is she? Has she been kidnapped? Police canvassed the town that night, asking if anyone knew Lloyd Bogle. At some point, Patricia Kalitzke's parents heard about what happened to Lloyd, and they immediately called the police. Police got out to the Kalitzke home late that night, and the Kalitzkes told police that their daughter had left earlier that night with Lloyd to go to the drive-in diner. And they were worried, Gibbs. I mean, it was a time of night where Patricia should have returned.
Should have been home and probably getting ready for bed.
By that time, they knew what had happened to Lloyd. That had to have scared them completely. So they asked police, hey, did you find Patricia? Was she with Lloyd? They said no, she was not there. They hadn't found her, but they would continue to look. The very next day, police found a female body about 7 miles from the Lover's Lane spot. And it turned out to be the body of Patricia Kalitzke. She was found fully dressed on a steep embankment of the Sun River. And she too, just like Lloyd, had been shot in the back of the head. It was determined later that both victims were killed with a single shot each. One shot to the head.
Almost execution style, really, it seems like.
Yeah, I never know. Sometimes I think execution style is 2 shots to the back of the head. But, for me, when I think about it, when somebody shoots somebody in the back of the head, what are they doing? They are executing them.
That's why I see it.
It was disclosed that Patricia had not been sexually assaulted. And I said it, she was found fully clothed. But that doesn't mean that she couldn't have been sexually assaulted. When they did the examination, though, they confirmed that she was not. The police did recover at the Lover's Lane murder scene money and a camera inside the car. And I think, Gibbs, that one of the natural inclinations on the part of the police would have been to think, okay, this is a robbery that somehow went horribly wrong. 2 people ended up dead.
Right.
But, finding the money, finding the camera, it kind of eliminates that. I mean, who commits a robbery and is not going to take these very easy, valuable things?
Yeah, why wouldn't you just grab them?
Doesn't take long.
No.
So police didn't have a lot of clues to go on. But then a man came forward, a man named Wendell Wallace Smith, who claimed to have killed a boy and girl in Great Falls. But eventually he was ruled out as a suspect by Great Falls police in 1964. So I don't know exactly when he came forward, Gibbs, but I don't think it was all that long after the murders took place. Sounds like it took them quite a while to rule him out.
To clear him out of there, yeah.
There was another man who claimed that he had killed the young couple. And this was a man who had the background to absolutely do something like this. It was Edward Wayne Edwards, kind of an infamous serial killer. Edwards claimed that he was hiding out in Great Falls after committing some murders in Portland, Oregon. And while he was in Great Falls, he came across a young couple. He pulled a gun on them, and he said this couple begged him not to shoot them, but he did anyway with his .32 caliber handgun. It gives to me, this is interesting because there are some records that put Edwards in Great Falls at the time of these murders, but police don't believe that he was the killer. But there's no doubt he was a very bad guy.
Oh, he was.
He was convicted of a number of murders in Ohio, Wisconsin. He's believed to have been responsible for murders in Oregon, but Edwards died in prison in 2011. So he's not going to be able to offer up any more information. He's definitely a person that we will do in a future episode on TCAT for sure.
His name gets tossed around here and there.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that gets connected to a number of unsolved homicides because he did operate in a handful of states.
Yeah. I mean, I read one article when there was a book about him that allegedly he is tied to the Zodiac killings.
Him and about 30,000 other people.
Exactly.
Everybody's got a book that says either my dad was the Zodiac or this is who the Zodiac was.
Will the real Zodiac please stand up?
So this is an old double murder, right? Happened in 1956.
Yeah.
But Great Falls police didn't give up on trying to find the killer. In 1989, they tried to x-ray the tree next to where Lloyd was found because they thought that maybe the bullet that killed Lloyd was lodged in this tree. So maybe if they could retrieve it, that could potentially provide them with a very good lead.
The problem was the x-ray, when they did it, it didn't come out very well because it was so grainy they couldn't really identify anything.
Well, I think it was a pretty big tree.
Yeah, it was a big tree.
So what they did was they cut it down. This was a 150-year-old cottonwood tree. And it was big. It was like 80 feet tall, 4.5 feet in diameter. So they cut it down to try to find this bullet. They didn't find just one bullet. They found 8 bullets.
Yeah. It's an old tree, man.
And they weren't all the same. There was a number of different calibers. When you have a 150-year-old tree, you're going to have some bullets in there. People shoot at trees all the time.
Right.
Out in rural areas, not in my neighborhood, thankfully.
I mean, I like where they were going with it. It made good sense.
They're trying hard. Now, I think a lot of people are going to say, man, I wish you didn't have to cut down that 150-year-old cottonwood tree.
Yeah.
But, you do have to give them credit for taking the initiative, not giving up on trying to solve these murders. So what they had planned to do was run some DNA analysis on the bullets, and that was kind of played up in the paper.
Right.
The problem is we couldn't find any articles after that said, okay, they did this, and here's what they found.
Right.
So it was kind of like, I'm assuming nothing came from it, or else there would have been some big, bombshell, or there would have been something good to report.
Right.
The murders of Lloyd Bogle and Patricia Kalitzke, they still remain unsolved today.
Yeah.
The next case that we want to talk about took place on September 4th, 1964 in Great Falls. On the morning of Friday, September 4th, a beer salesman and a produce manager discovered the body of 35-year-old Lois Arrotta, face down, near the produce section of the East Side Super Save grocery store. She had on a white sweater that was covered with blood. Her feet were tied together with a clothesline, and then that was tied to a steel door.
Yeah. This is a brutal case.
Yeah, it really is. She had been gagged with a torn piece of an apron. Her head had been severely beaten with a glass Pepsi bottle.
And you remember back then how thick those things were. I mean, you could absolutely hurt somebody with
Oh,
those.
there's no doubt.
Yeah.
I can picture it in my head right now. My grandmother coming home from the grocery. She's got, I think they came in an 8-pack. If I remember correctly, there was 4 on each side with the cardboard handle in the middle.
Right.
And there's just something about a Pepsi out of a glass bottle. Now, I don't want to associate it too much with this because this was a brutal murder.
This was.
But to your point, the glass was very thick. And I think that is part of why the Pepsi tasted better. It got very cold too.
Yeah, and stayed cold because of
and
that.
it stayed cold. I think a little bit more than the plastic bottles today. You know, aside from being beaten with this Pepsi bottle, Lois had been stabbed at least 13 times in the back with a produce knife that had a long blade on it. And that really was determined to be her cause of death.
Yes.
Obviously, she was hurt very badly from the beating with the Pepsi bottle, but it was the stabbings with the knife that actually killed her. So gruesome scene to walk into in the morning, right? Opening up the store to find a woman dead. Then these guys found Lois's husband, 43-year-old James Arrotta, in a back office about 25 feet from his wife, Lois. James was the manager of the store. His head, too, had been severely beaten with a glass Pepsi bottle. He was lying on his back, and his arms and feet were bound with clothesline. He was also gagged with a piece of the torn apron. James had been stabbed with the same long-bladed produce knife in his back at least 9 times. And this is what killed him as well.
Definitely brutal.
Investigators figured out that the store had a time delay safe. So it was a safe that the killer was never able to open.
Right.
And I think the question is, was the manager able to open it, or would it only open at a certain time and not before? And I think, that's where investigators kind of maybe started to theorize that that's why the Pepsi bottle was used.
Right.
To try to beat James and Lois, probably, at separate times.
Right.
To try to get James to open this safe.
Sure. Start beating his wife. You going to open it now? Are you going to open it now? And then when that didn't happen, they went to him and started beating him. And they must have realized they're not going to be able to help you open this because it's on this time delay.
And there was nothing he could do.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you right now, if you see your wife being hurt in front of you, you're going to open that safe.
Yeah, there's no amount of dollars in that
No.
safe that's going to keep you from not giving up the code or whatever to save anybody from that type of beating.
But because of this, they figured out that the killer got away with $37 from the store.
$37 for 2 people's lives.
He killed 2 people.
Yeah.
Investigators went to the Arrotta home and they found their 59 Plymouth station wagon sitting out front. So I don't think it was that hard, Gibbs, for them to put it together. Investigators believe that the killer kidnapped the Arrottas in the early morning hours from their home and forced them into their station wagon, drove to the store, and tried to get James to open the safe. But once the killer figured out that the safe was not going to open, he killed James and Lois, got back into their car, and drove back to their house. Then he went inside and stole James' coin collection because investigators found the empty coin collection books 12 days later near Black Eagle Dam on the Missouri River. So they found 10 books in total, and all 10 books were together and they were bundled up with wire.
Yeah.
when they were tossed.
Well, the coins were missing, so,
Yeah. I mean, the killer took the good part
Right.
and then tried to discard the evidence, but police found it and they sent the books to the FBI to have them analyzed. Investigators looked into suspects in other robberies in the area to see maybe if they could find a connection.
Right.
They just couldn't put it all together. I mean, they interviewed over 100 people.
Fingerprint about a dozen.
Which was important because they were able to pull fingerprints from the knife that killed James and Lois, as well as some other items from the crime scene and the car. So they had some good fingerprint evidence. They just needed to find the person whose fingerprints matched. But that's the big problem, Gibbs, right? They just never could find a match to the fingerprints. They had a tough time developing leads.
So it'd be nice if they had a system like they do today that they could potentially feed those prints into and maybe get them out of some national database and saying, oh, by the way, ring, 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 here's your killer.
Sure.
He lives over in this state. Now, can you prove that he was actually there and maybe you got something?
Yeah. I mean, obviously much different back then, right?
Right.
What did we say? They fingerprinted a dozen or so people.
Yep.
So they have those fingerprints. They're checking those. They don't match.
Right.
Well, it's not like they can just tap into, hundreds of thousands of fingerprints on file. The technologies just didn't exist.
Yeah. Amazing where we are today.
And it's amazing that crimes still don't get solved, right?
Yeah.
With all the tools, there still are times when you just can't solve a case. Just weeks after the murder, an Army soldier from Billings, Montana, who was stationed in Pennsylvania, confessed to the killings, but he was ruled out when it was discovered that he hadn't even been in Montana at the time that the murders were committed.
It always blows me away with these people who just claim they did it. I did it.
And it's happened a lot over the years. False confessions. And I'm not even talking about coerced confessions.
Right.
I'm just talking about people of their own volition walking into a police station and saying, I want to confess to a crime.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's a lot of reasons. Mental health probably has played a big part over the years, maybe to a smaller degree. There are some people who decide, you know what? I can't cope in this world.
Yeah.
I'd rather be in prison where I know I'm going to have a bed. I know I'm going to get 3 squares a day.
Right.
It's hard for me to think that way, but I'm sure there are people that have either been so down on their luck or they just can't cope with what it takes to make it through life.
It's the easy answer for them.
It could be. I'm just throwing out possible things because to most people that makes no sense, right? To just confess to a murder or a double murder.
No. I mean, we double murder here. In the case before this, we had someone confess to that one too that didn't do it. And I know that we're going to talk about another one in the next case.
Now, I'm going to throw something else out there, which is I think there are people that maybe crave the attention.
Yeah.
And know that it's never going to get to the point, or hope that it's never going to get to the point where it puts them in prison, but they're going to soak up the attention for as long as it lasts.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe they can prove that there's no way it could have been them, but let's string the police along for a while. Yeah. I'll get all this attention, and that's what I'm craving.
Maybe this guy wanted to be kicked out of the military.
That's another option for this guy specifically. 2 years later in 1966, a grocery store manager was found bound and gagged, as were his wife and son. He told the police that 2 armed, masked men broke into his home and demanded that he give them the keys to the store and the safe combination. And he said that these intruders told him, if you don't give us what we want, you're going to get what the Great Falls couple got. So obviously this is something that the police were going to investigate, along with what happened to this guy and his wife and son.
Right.
but they were never able to link the two crimes together. This case went cold for a long time, decades. But then in 2001, cold case investigators questioned former employees of the grocery store where James and Lois were killed. Investigators learned that a man named Alan Reevely had been fired just 2 weeks before the murders occurred. So they're investigating this guy in 2001. I mean, Gibbs, this is what, 37 years later, after the murders happened. You know, at this point in time, Alan Reevely was the chair of a number of organizations. One of those was the Great Falls Food Bank.
Yeah.
While they're looking into this guy, investigators figured out that he was embezzling from some of these organizations.
That's such a good guy.
Police arrested and charged Reevely with the murder of the Arrottas, as well as the theft from the store and the coin collection in 2002. I mean, Gibbs, you want to talk about thinking that you've gotten away with something if he was the murderer?
Yeah.
38 years later, you're going to arrest me?
Come knocking on your door.
I mean, that's some East Area rapist, Golden State Killer type stuff.
Oh, it sure is.
You know, you've lived, the bulk of your life as a free man. Witnesses testified that Reevely had talked during a religious retreat about killing people when he was younger. And one witness said that he claimed he was the one who found the bodies of the Arrottas. I think the big problem was there was no physical evidence in this 38-year-old case to link him to the murders. And so it took a while, but he was found not guilty in 2004.
If you don't have his prints on the bottle or prints on the knife or anything, how do you, he can be somebody that was upset because he lost his job, and that's where it ends.
I guess the issue I have is, obviously they had something. You and I don't have all the details of what police had or what was introduced at trial. They had enough to think that he should be arrested and charged.
You hope it was more than him just, the hearsay of him saying something to somebody at some religious retreat.
And I'm sure it was. The problem is we don't know it all, but the jury heard it all and they found him not guilty. Now, he was later convicted for embezzlement from those organizations, and he did his time and then was paroled. So again, I don't know if he had anything to do with the murders or not. All I can say is a jury of his peers heard all of the evidence that was presented.
Right.
And they said that you don't have enough. We don't feel you have enough for us to put this man away for murder. When the Arrottas died, they left behind 7 children.
It's a big family.
And none of the 7 were older than 12 when their parents were murdered. And I mentioned that the Arrottas were taken in the early morning hours. So all these kids would have been asleep. None of them remembered their parents leaving, and none of them recalled anything suspicious from the night before. After the murder of their parents, all 7 of the Arrotta children were sent to live with their grandparents in Pendleton, Oregon. So far, Gibbs, we've talked about 2 unsolved double murders that occurred in Great Falls in less than a 10-year period of time. They were shocking.
Oh, they had to be.
To the community.
Alarming, yeah.
I think in some articles, people have come out and said, you know what? We were living in Great Falls at the time of these killings, and it was almost like the community lost its sense of innocence.
Yeah.
And this is something that you and I talk about in a lot of episodes, right? You have these communities, these smaller communities. I don't know how big Great Falls is, but they're safe. People feel safe. People don't lock their doors and windows.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, something happens, tragedy, murder, and that changes everything within that community. From that point forward, you do lose that sense of kind of carefree innocence, it's gone. You've got to lock your doors. You've got to lock your windows because this terrible thing happened.
Yeah, it's not like they're living in this big city where I don't want to say expect that stuff, but it's where you would see that stuff on a more normal basis.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt the listeners understand if you live in New York City, there's more murders. That's just how it happens.
Exactly.
Or LA or any big city is going to see a much higher number of murders than the small towns that we live in, or, some of the small towns that these cases take place in. But just 10 years later, the town of Great Falls would experience another unsolved murder. On July 28th, 1974, 75-year-old Michael Dudas had been out having a late dinner at a local tavern. He stayed afterwards at the bar to have a drink with some friends. Michael left the tavern that night sometime before 1 a.m. and arrived at his apartment located at 10th Street and North 2nd Avenue just after 1 a.m. He got into his apartment, but he didn't lock his door. He went to the bedroom, changed, and got ready for bed. Around 1:20 a.m., he went back to the front door to lock it, but found an intruder standing inside his apartment, and this intruder shot Michael Dudas point blank, right in the forehead. Michael fell to the floor, and the gunman then stood over him, firing 2 more bullets into the side of his head. It was later determined that the murder weapon was a small caliber handgun. So a lot of times, Gibbs, papers say small caliber.
Yeah.
When I hear small caliber, I think 22.
I do too.
You could say 308, but that's the first thing that jumps out to me is 22. And in the 70s, 22 caliber handguns were more prevalent.
Yeah, I mean, you probably still have some 25, but
yeah, you could have.
Yeah.
You had some of those back then. Some of those calibers you rarely see today. But it was something in that range, is what I would imagine. Michael Dudas's body was found around 5:30 a.m. that morning of the 29th by his neighbor leaving for work. And this was a situation where the neighbor's walking by Michael's apartment and the door's wide open. So the killer shot him 3 times,
yeah,
left the apartment, but didn't bother to shut the door.
wide open.
So this neighbor walks by, probably looks in, because who doesn't when you
Right.
see an open door,
Sure.
and sees this 75-year-old man dead on the living room floor.
What a way to start your morning.
The police were called out to the scene. They didn't find any evidence of theft. This killing seemed to be a hit or some type of random murder because,
Yeah.
who walks into somebody's apartment, shoots someone, and doesn't take any valuables?
And leave the front door wide open. Wouldn't you want to close it to give you some time for them to try to discover the body?
Well, you would think. But if it was a hit, wouldn't you think a hitman would be a little bit smarter about how they did their work?
You would think, unless they're one of those novice hitmen, wannabes.
Well, everybody starts somewhere.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't start out being an
That's true.
experienced hitman.
That's true. You learn the ropes.
Police talked to neighbors in the apartment complex, and one of the neighbors told police that at around 1:20 a.m., they heard some thuds, and it was possible that it was either gunshots or it was Michael falling to the floor after he had been shot.
Yeah. But it's nice that they didn't think about calling anybody at that time either. Like, hey, police, or you might want to come check this out.
But for everybody listening who's lived in an apartment
Oh, yeah.
complex, you hear all kinds of stuff.
Oh, my.
Depending on how thin the walls are, the ceilings are.
You hear things you don't want to hear.
Yeah. And you hear strange noises. You're not picking up the telephone every time you hear one.
Yeah. To the point, you realize when you can hear things and your brain, you finally go, oh, wow.
They can hear me too.
They can hear me too.
I better stop doing what I'm doing. Police theorized that someone had followed Michael from the tavern and entered his apartment not that long after he did, right? We said he got there sometime after 1. So police thought, okay, the intruder walked into his apartment sometime between 1:15. He then shot Michael Dudas in the forehead and then 2 more times after he had fallen to the floor. Police generated about 50 leads in this case, but nothing ever came from those. And the case went cold and it's never been solved. But there is one very interesting thing that is related to this case. And it's that in 1956, when Edward Wayne Edwards arrived in Great Falls, Montana, he lived in this exact same apartment.
Yeah.
Where Michael Dudas was killed.
It's bizarre.
Some people feel that Edwards returned to the apartment 18 years later and killed Michael Dudas. What the reason would be, I don't know.
I wouldn't either. It seems to be
kind of just a strange connection.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, are you going to want to revisit somewhere where you lived? Yeah, maybe. But do you feel the need to kill the person that lives there? Maybe if you're Edwards. Maybe.
I mean, he did prefer small caliber guns.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know, if he had anything to do with it. To me, it just seems like a strange connection that you could make into something, but obviously there's no proof to back it up. I think most people, and especially law enforcement, believe that this was either an attempted robbery gone wrong or some type of hit.
Yeah.
And again, I still have problems with both of those. A robbery gone wrong, why? Because you ended up killing the person? Well, why couldn't you or the robber just have taken what he wanted
right
after the shooting? Or was he scared because he fired the gun and he thought somebody would hear him? That's a possibility. And I don't know why a hitman would leave the door open.
I wouldn't either. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I can see maybe Michael was showing some cash around at the bar when he left. Maybe somebody said, "Hey, I need money." Followed him, walked in, tried to take the money, took the money and said, "You know what, I can't have a witness," and shot him. But why shoot him in the forehead and then stand over him, shoot him 2 more times? Unless, clearly want to make sure he was dead, but it just seems extreme.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is a kind of a really baffling case. I mean, obviously all these unsolved are, but there's some weird things about this one, no doubt. And I think it will be one that's pretty difficult to solve. I mean, you're talking about a case that's 40 years old plus. Great Falls would experience another tragic unsolved murder when Morris Davis Jr. was killed 11 years later in 1985. Morris was a big guy, 6'2", 240 pounds, and he was very strong.
This is the guy you called when you needed things to be moved. And he liked doing it. He liked helping people.
Much like yourself. You're the first person I call when I have something very heavy that needs to be moved from point A to point B.
And I always feel bad when I'm out of town when you call.
I mean, you said he was always willing to help. And I mean, those sentiments were echoed by a lot of people. They said that this was just a very kind young man. I mean, this guy had a passion for life. He loved to dance at the clubs and he worked at clubs as a bouncer.
Hey, just like you.
Very much like me. He loved his golden Labrador Retriever, his 1958 red Ford pickup truck, and of course his family. On his days off, Morris would either be at the speedway track, working with the pit crew for a friend, or he would be doing something outdoors.
Oh, hunting, skiing, fishing, camping, all those things you like.
Yeah, he loved to do all of that. Morris graduated from Great Falls High School in 1980. After high school, he worked at Bison Ford for 2 years. When they downsized, he was let go. His dad got him a job at Howard's Pizza, where his dad was the manager of the delivery drivers. But on April 5th, 1985, 23-year-old Morris Davis Jr. was working at Howard's Pizza. That evening, delivering pizzas, a man called in a pizza order to be delivered to 10156 6th Avenue. Morris was the delivery driver for that order that night. So he grabbed the order and a couple others and he headed out.
Did you ever deliver?
I never delivered pizzas, but if you remember, I did that thing called Takeout Taxi,
Yeah.
which, I mean, that was 20 some years ago.
That's the Grubhub or the
Yeah, it was kind of the way before its time, Grubhub,
DoorDash.
Uber Eats.
Yeah.
The problem was there was no technology, so we used CB radios. It was kind of really old school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Morris got to this address, this 10156 6th Avenue. He got out of his truck and he went to the front porch. Then all of a sudden, the front door opened and Morris was met by a gunman who fired 8 to 9 rounds into Morris at point blank range. Morris failed to return to Howard's Pizza, and some customers started calling in wanting to know where their orders were. That's when the store manager got concerned.
Yeah, because I think Morris was probably one of those employees that got the job done, didn't mess around.
So the manager sent a second delivery person to this address to look for Davis, and this person found his bloody body lying on the ground. This guy called for help, and the police arrived, as did the paramedics. The first paramedic arrived on scene, and as the paramedic walked up to the victim, he noticed his brother's red Ford pickup truck out front. So as he got up to the body, he could only see the legs at first, but very quickly, Gibbs, he recognized the cowboy boots. He knew it was his brother. Cliff Davis was shocked. He could not believe what he was seeing. His brother had been murdered for no apparent reason. During the investigation, authorities found the house to be a vacant bank-owned foreclosure. The killer had broken into the back of the house to gain entry. As soon as Morris got onto the porch, the killer stepped out and opened fire. The motive appeared to be robbery. The killer took the money pouch that Morris had been carrying as he delivered his pizzas. This is where he kept all the payments, and later at night, he would settle up with the store after delivery runs or at the end of the night, depending on how busy they were.
So it could have a substantial amount of money inside of them, depending on
when the last time he settled up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could. We don't know because it's never been reported that we could find how much the killer got away with.
But it was interesting that the killer didn't take Morris's wallet out of his pocket and never took his little change thing on his belt, which, I mean, that could probably have $10, $15, right?
It could, but it would also take a while to get out.
Yeah, if you just want to be in a hurry.
Well, unless you took the whole thing. I guess you would just take the whole thing.
Right.
So it is strange that if you're thinking this is straight robbery, again, why not take everything you can get? But maybe the killer felt like he had gotten enough. There was enough in the money pouch. Investigators found some .22 caliber shell casings at the site. So they knew the killer used a .22 caliber gun, and they had the shell casings to try to match it if they could track it down. This murder had major implications on the pizza delivery businesses in Great Falls. I mean, they essentially changed the very next day.
They did.
Pizza places began calling customers back to confirm orders and that the porch light would be on when the driver arrived.
They even told people that place orders, and they also placed articles in the newspaper as well saying drivers will only have $30 or less on them, nothing more.
Some pizza places started sending 2 delivery persons to make one delivery, one to run up to the home and the other to drive and stay in the car. Drivers were told that if a place looked vacant or even suspicious, just drive away, come back to the store and call the customer and tell them that they had to come up to the store to pick up their order.
Well, you know what? When someone loses their life over a pizza order, it's not worth it, right? I mean, you say until they can figure out who did it and calm things back down. But right now, you got somebody that just killed a delivery guy and he's still out there.
But I don't know if, at least with some of these things, it would ever change. Because I think even today, like with a Domino's driver, seems like on the side of the car, it says drivers don't carry something.
I think you're right.
Or on the commercials, I remember seeing them.
And it should, because I've heard of other stories where pizza delivery guys get robbed.
Sure.
Because they're an easy target. So
because your victim is coming to you.
Right. You just typically don't hear that they're shot and murdered for this kind of stuff, though.
By August of 1985, police had no clues as to who killed Morris. There was a $7,000 reward offered.
I think the money was raised by Howard's Pizza and the tavern that he bounced at, and Crime Stoppers threw some money into.
Then on August 9th, Great Falls police arrested 29-year-old Gerald Ross Pizzuto for 2 murders in Idaho that he was wanted for. Pizzuto had fled Idaho to Montana to hide out. Gibbs, he tried to confess to the Morris Davis murder to avoid Montana sending him back to Idaho because he was trying to avoid the death penalty.
So he knew he was going to get the death penalty if he goes back to Idaho. So raises his hand and says, hey, you know what? I did that. Let me stay here. At least I'll get life. That's
well, that to me, that's I'm guilty of these other murders, and they obviously have enough evidence to put me away.
Right.
Because he's not even taking his chances of going on trial. The problem with his confession is that police were able to determine that this guy wasn't even in town at the time that Morris Davis was murdered. Later that month in August, Pizzuto was sent back to Idaho to face his charges there. On November 8th, the Great Falls police asked the FBI for help. They wanted them to help profile the killer of Morris Davis.
Well, that's a good sign when the police feel that they need to reach out to the FBI and use those resources. I think sometimes maybe police feel like they should be able to handle everything themselves. But if it's outside your realm, reach out to those experts.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. The FBI has a massive amount of resources, right? You can't compare the resources of the Great Falls Police Department to the FBI. There's no comparison.
Right.
So if you can tap into that, swallow your pride and do it, I always look at that as a good thing. On October 6, 1986, 18-year-old Suzette Pritchard, a convenience store clerk working the night shift, was stabbed 24 times to death. Her killer got away with a grand total of $300.
Makes you sick, doesn't it?
$300.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think Gibbs, and obviously this would never happen, but if I was there, I would just get $300 from the ATM and say, here, please don't kill this person. Yeah. Here's $300.
Go away, but don't. She's 18 years old.
It's just so senseless. Police weren't able to generate any leads, but they did feel that it was possible that whoever killed Suzette was the same person that killed Morris Davis. But both cases went cold for a number of years. Then in 1988, police arrested a man who had stolen a car. His name was Donald Dubray. In his possession, he had a receipt for a gun that he had just pawned. The gun had been reported stolen from an individual in Oregon. Investigators ran ballistics on this .22 caliber handgun, and it matched the shell casings at the Morris Davis murder site. Both the gun owner and Donald Dubray were cleared because it was proven that the ballistics testing was inaccurate. So basically it wouldn't hold up in court.
Right. The police felt good about it, but they weren't going to be able to move forward with it.
Now, I don't know if they thought the gun owner was involved.
I don't think so.
I think they felt that the person who stole it, which was Donald Dubray,
right,
was somehow involved in the murder of Morris Davis, but they couldn't make it stick. Then in 1997, Great Falls police got a tip from an informant claiming that Donald Dubray told him that he killed both Morris and Suzette. So Gibbs, I think Dubray stayed on police radar for years in both murders.
Right.
They were trying to tie him to both of these murders. In 1998, he was arrested, but only for the murder of Suzette Pritchard. They were able to find enough evidence to convince a jury, and he was convicted of deliberate homicide, theft, and robbery in the case of Suzette. He was ultimately sentenced to life in prison, but he's never admitted to the Morris Davis murder.
There's been multiple attempts by investigators throughout the years reaching out to him and trying to get him to say, hey, just come clean. But he never did.
And even before this conviction, I mean, he had a long rap sheet, a long criminal history. He had been found guilty for sexually assaulting a young girl. Over the years, he had been charged and convicted of 6 different felonies and 100 misdemeanors. Okay. You got yourself a rap sheet.
Yeah, he's used to the system.
Dubray was found dead in his cell at Montana State Prison in 2016. He was 55 years old. So, it's great that they were able to solve the murder of Suzette Pritchard.
Right.
The murder of Morris Davis Jr. is still unsolved, although I believe police think, and it seems as though from the limited information and evidence that we know about,
right,
that Dubray was most likely involved somehow. But then you have all these other unsolved murders. Lloyd Bogle, Patricia Kalitzke, James and Lois Arrotta, as well as 75-year-old Michael Dudas.
Yeah.
And, these aren't just, to me, kind of your average unsolved murders. And I hate to say it that way. I mean, I don't think any unsolved murder is average. I guess where I'm getting at is, all of these have just some very strange, bizarre, interesting facets to the cases.
Yeah, if either some type of tie-in or how the murder took place. Yeah.
And for them all to occur, I mean, I know we're spanning a number of years.
Right.
But to kind of all lump them into this Great Falls area, it's just a number of bizarre unsolved murder cases.
Yeah.
That's it for the Great Falls murders. Gibbs, we've got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. It's Lisa from up here in Ontario, Canada. I think it's such a shame that you two have nothing coming to you in the mail. You sound quite depressed over it. So I have just put in the mail a little piece of it for you. I also wanted to give you a suggestion for Unsolved. It's a local case. My daughter and I were talking about it on the weekend, and I thought, gee, these guys might be interested in this. It's got a lot of twists and turns to it, and it's just the kind of case you guys like. And it's for Misty Murray. She's a local girl who went missing, and her adoptive father was charged for her disappearance without her body being found. And, yeah, it's quite interesting. I thought you might enjoy it. And I'm pretty sure I had sent you, earlier on Dylan Millard. I find him very interesting too. A very, very, good example of a rich little spoiled boy. Anyways, I hope you two are able to stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know when that voicemail was left, but we have not received that package yet, but I know packages seem like they're taking a long time.
Well, especially coming from Canada here with that border being closed and all that.
It does seem like they're taking longer than normal.
Yeah.
So the unsolved case we'll definitely look into. Millard is on the list for sure.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Maya. I'm calling from Dallas, Texas. I've been listening to you guys for about 3 or 4 months now, and I figured it was time to give y'all a call. I finished all of TCAT. I'm working on TCAT Unsolved right now, and, I just love you guys. I'm actually a Corona ICU nurse here in Dallas, and so being able to listen to you guys on my off day is therapeutic in whatever weird way that true crime can be therapeutic and soothing to me. So thanks for hearing me. Stay safe. Wash your hands and keep your own time ticking. All right, bye-bye.
Working that front line.
Yeah, we appreciate what you do very much. Actually, changing the tagline to wash your hands and keep your own time ticking. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't think she's alone, Gibbs. I think a lot of people find true crime therapeutic. I really do. In the way that, my wife finds some of these HGTV shows therapeutic for whatever reason. Now, I think true crime is a little different. I think it helps some people to stay on their toes, keep their head on a swivel, be more cautious when maybe they wouldn't normally be, but also just therapeutic it's just a break.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's reality, but it's a break from whatever it is you have going on in your life.
It's like when I read the theory of relativity,
sure. Or when you solve equations.
Yeah.
When you're doing your janitor job at night.
Got
for
that.
Really smart people to find the next day, and then they have no idea who did it.
And you wonder why I turned down Dartmouth.
Exactly.
Now you know. How you like those apples?
How you like them apples?
Hi guys, this is Ginger calling from San Jose, California. Been listening to your show, I want to say since last October, and I'm totally hooked. Between your fascinating cases and humorous banter, your podcast is truly one of a kind. And it's probably one of the first podcasts I've ever listened to, so I'm definitely sticking with it. I especially love your True Crime All the Time Unsolved. I do have a recommendation for you guys. I was watching a show on the Investigation Discovery Channel. It's called Still a Mystery. It featured a case about a girl called Katie Jones. Unfortunately, she was gunned down while walking home one night, literally at a quarter of a mile from her house. This took place in Charlotte, North Carolina, and she was only 26. I guess the cops have a few leads, but have not been able to solve it. Anyway, please keep up your wonderful podcast, the lighthearted banter you guys have, and the great in-depth research. We'll definitely keep all of us listening, and keep your own time ticking. Thanks a lot, guys.
Well, thank you for the voicemail.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And we'll definitely check into that case.
Yeah.
We're getting some good leads on unsolved cases.
We really are.
Hello, this is Sandra. I called once before, and I didn't give my location because I wanted to see if you guys could guess it. I actually live in Texas, but was born in Chicago. That's irrelevant, though. I was listening to the KJ Unsolved case as I was driving to my EMT test, and I have just two questions. Can't they ask the kid who would have left KJ's shoes if you put him in an upright mat? Because I don't see why a kid would drop him down an upright tube, first of all. And then secondly, couldn't they just do a simulation where they put some sort of weight that weighs about the same as KJ would have into a mat, and seeing if him struggling enough as much as they could would have caused it to fall over? If he's at the very, end of it and it's unbalanced because it's only 6 feet tall, I feel like it would have fallen. So that's all I have. I appreciate all you guys do and calming me down on my very long, anxious drive. Thank you.
Yeah, it makes sense. I do know that KJ's dad did, when the mat was on the floor, he tried to fit himself into the middle of the mat by rolling his shoulders forward, and he still couldn't make himself go into it. So
I will say this, Gibbs, this case has divided people.
Sure.
Unlike most unsolved cases we did, there are a lot of people that are very one side or the other.
Yeah.
They're, okay, the family's got some legitimate gripes, or they're, the family's just after money. I mean, we've gotten a lot of feedback on this case. It's one of those that is very divisive. There's just no doubt about it. But that's it. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking, and wash your hands.
Always wash your hands.
Life can be chaotic. If you're running a retail business, don't let disorganized order fulfillment add to the chaos. Use ShipStation instead. With ShipStation, you never have to worry about shipping and fulfillment again. Whether you're running a business out of your garage or you have multiple warehouses, ShipStation is ideal for every phase of your business's growth. Save time with one login for all your stores and by automating repetitive tasks. Plus, you'll save money with the best shipping rates from global carriers. ShipStation's industry-leading features help you deliver a better customer experience. They'll get accurate and faster shipments along with automated tracking updates with your branding. And with up to 88% off UPS and USPS rates and up to 90% off FedEx rates, ShipStation is the fastest and most affordable way to ship. Calm the chaos. Switch to ShipStation today. Start a free trial at shipstation.com/audio. That's shipstation.com/audio.